Welcome back to SDR Confessions. As you all know, I'm here to uncover the secrets and stories that you may have not heard before that will make you laugh, but we'll also learn. And so today I have Tom from Cognism. Talk to us more about your role and what you do there.
Hey, so I'm Tom. I'm a SDR at Cognism. I've been an SDR for about 6 months now. And I'm here to confess one of my funny stories, what in my last 6 months at Cognism.
Awesome. So, Tom, what is your confession?
Right, so this happened, I think it must have been about a couple months ago. And at first, this was first some outreach via LinkedIn, because I was working on my LinkedIn, and I actually got a reply to get on a call with him. And this seemed like an ideal prospect. He didn't have any lead generation tools. Like he's just relying on Sales Navigator. The quality wasn't particularly ideal. And I just thought this is just an ideal, prospect to book in. And he was so keen to see the platform. And I was just thinking, this is brilliant. This would be a great opportunity. And book him in for the day after. And day after comes by. I gave all the information to my account executive, and she got off the call and she messaged me on Slack. She was saying, "Tom, this company is bankrupt."
That's not funny, but wait, what? What?
Yeah, it was bankrupt. I was just thinking, like, what do you mean they're bankrupt? It was like the head of marketing of this company has just told me they're bankrupt, so I can't qualify it. And I was just thinking, no, hang on, I'm going to call this guy. This is something's happening. There must be some miscommunication or something. And I called him, and he said, "Oh yeah, we're in the process of changing ownership at the minute, so budget's not really a thing." And I was just thinking in my head, well, sure, this is something not worth mentioning, perhaps.
Yeah, it's like,
beforehand
maybe you could have
something.
let me know. Like, what's the deal here?
Whilst doing all these qualifications, doing the discovery, understanding what they need. And whilst I'm on the call, I just noticed, because Dave is the director of SDRs, he's actually sitting next to me, and he's on the call with the account executive because she
Yeah.
was talking to him about it. And then I just hear him talking to the account executive going, "So who was it? Who was the SDR?" And she wouldn't give a name, and then she was wouldn't give a name for a couple of minutes. And whilst I was on the call with the prospect, I just see Dave's head just tilt towards me. And I'm just thinking, oh God, how is this going to go down? But anyway, the up didn't qualify. And then Dave just basically says, like, why did you bring in a bankrupt company?
It's like, what are you doing?
This is not the context. I didn't know. It was a funny story at the time. We joke about it. Like, when I book another company in, I messaged him saying, like, this one's definitely not bankrupt. But who knows? They could be in the process of changing ownership in the future also.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that is one of the more wild stories, because it's like there's so many questions to it. It's like, okay, even we're gonna dive into what we could have done better here, obviously. But at the same time, it's also on that person. Like, if you knew there was a potential bankrupt that was happening, that doesn't just happen typically overnight, why would you take the call? What is the purpose in you taking
what?
that call? There's so many questions there. You're like, what is going on? Makes no sense.
Well, it's just one of them where the whole role of an SDR is not just putting people in; it's objection handling. And I feel if I was the prospect in that case, saying the company was bankrupt, that's a pretty good, objection. More than
Yeah.
anything.
Like, I'm probably not. I have
But
no training on how to handle that. Like, okay, you're bankrupt. Like, we're gonna move on to the next call. There's nothing there for you.
like one of the few times you would just say, "Fair enough,"
Yeah. Like,
we move on to the next. But no, he was great. He gave me everything I needed, except the small bit that the company was bankrupt. But and best part now, I now see him on LinkedIn, and they're hiring.
no.
So
So I guess was he really bankrupt? There's a lot of questions here, right? There's so many questions that I have.
there's a lot of
A lot of
mysteries.
mysteries.
But lesson learned. A lesson learned. Proper due diligence is needed.
Clearly. So when you think of due diligence, how do you think of that today? What are some questions that you're now asking to make sure that they have maybe some funds in the bank?
I mean, funds in the bank. That's interesting. I haven't thought of one yet because it hasn't happened
Hmm.
since. I'll be honest. What I could do is, I mean, talk about budgets. Especially around January, it's always a time about budgets. It's the new year, especially in these circumstances. Like, it's probably something worth discussing. Especially if it's a much smaller company, you could sort of sometimes might mention the minimum pricing of the
Yeah.
platform, so it's not wasting both of our times. So that's something I definitely could have done. Um, but also, I feel from his end, it probably was something worth mentioning. But
Yeah. Right.
we do.
Yeah. That's just it's such a wild scenario to me when I hear things like that. It's like, wait, what the heck? Like, why would that even be happening? So now that you're thinking about more of the discovery and things of that nature, what are things that you now look for before you prospect someone to evade that? Are you looking at, okay, are they hiring X amount of people? Like, what are some things that you're diving into now?
Well, it's the small things like say on LinkedIn, where you go on the
Mm,
insights page, you can see, the growth of the company in the last couple of years. And you can also see on their website, say certain announcements, whether it's like a funding or, a new hiring or you can see LinkedIn pages that are hiring SDRs
mm.
or, marketing managers, etc. Those are all sort of like small green flags to say, this company is doing
Yeah,
just fine.
yeah,
So
yeah. And so how do you leverage that? Because some people I think stop there, right? They'll just be like, all right, I see that they're hiring marketing, I see they're hiring sales, but how are you taking that to the next level?
Well, I say the hiring sales, like the road you go down to is sort of understand. So if they're hiring, they must be doing well. So you understand what their current processes are, what's working. But there's nothing that's going to be perfect. Like you always want to go to the next level.
Mm,
So that's where you sort of promote Cognism as, we're a lead generation tool, we're the largest out there. Like, do you think having a tool as you're hiring more SDRs by having a tool like ours, they're going to have more access to reach out to further
right.
prospects? So therefore, you'll be reaching, higher growths at a shorter space of time.
Yeah. I think that's a really good call as well. Again, I think looking at people, why they're hiring them and the reasons for that is something that's under leveraged. People don't focus on that enough, in my opinion. So I really like that you're diving into that. Now, obviously, again, I don't think the bankrupt experience will happen again. If it does, then I don't know, maybe you should never fill out any type of jackpot or slots or go or do anything because like you're just inherently unlucky at this point, right? But when you're thinking about listening and handing off to an account executive, what are some things that you pay attention to make sure that the account executive is like, wow, I'm fired up to get an opportunity from Tom?
Um, so sorry, just to understand, what questions will I ask for an account executive to think this is a good
Yeah, so
opportunity?
let's say you're talking to you cold call someone. Let's use cold call for example. You're talking
Yeah,
to them and
yeah.
you're like, "All right, this is a solid conversation." What are some things that you're looking to make sure that you ask or uncover or whatever that may be? So when you give it to your account executive, they're like, "This is a really good opportunity."
Tell you what, this is one thing I've learned very recently is there's a lot of times where I speak to prospects and they have multiple vendors. So the one question is quite simple. It's like, so why do you have multiple rather than one? Because you're having multiple because there's clearly something wrong with
Right.
one and there's clearly something wrong with the other. So you're sort of digging into two problems into one, which basically gives multiple reasons from their end, and that gives much more information to an account executives to give that better use case of say there's something wrong with X, there's something wrong with
Mhm.
Y. Here's how we unify those problems and fill those gaps.
Yeah.
So I feel there's a lot of companies out there that use dual vendors, and that's a question I found that's very effective, and that account executives do like a lot.
Do you okay, I think that's interesting there. Do you feel like when you do that, because you're connecting the dots, it's making it easier for the account executive to do discovery to connect those dots as well? Is that why you think they're like it? Like, what's the feedback you've been getting?
That's also my understanding, also
Mm,
because I feel it's all very well just saying, oh, they use Lusher, just compare, but that's quite vague.
right.
Like, if you understand as to why do they pick Lusher in the first place, how has it been going, um, where are the gaps, how could they benefit if those gaps were
Mhm,
filled, then that information before the before the meeting with the account executive has even started, that already builds a use case in a prospect's
right.
mind because they understanding their problems out loud, and then they're going into the meeting understanding already. I know what my problems are. Let's see how the account executive can show how we can solve
Right.
these.
Yeah. And that makes complete sense. And as you have gone, you're pretty what 8, 9 months into the role right now. What is something that you're
Yep.
focusing on more now as you're looking to make the next move in your career?
Um, One thing I'm focusing more now is I mean, for I'll be able to say these last 8, 9 months, I was especially my first like 3, 4 months was very much going more the Vega down the route. Oh, use Lusher, you lose Apollo,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah.
It's always an easy one, just saying go for a comparison, 15 minutes and whatnot. But then those will never close. So what I'm doing at the minute is asking those sort of questions where you have a better understanding, and then they're just much more likely to close.
Yeah.
And the results I've shown already in these last 3, 4 months.
So you're just taking the time to dive deeper rather than just getting an appointment. You're really trying to understand what is the compelling reason that someone should hop on these calls.
Exactly. You don't want to be, you don't want to get them to, you don't want to waste your account executive's time. Right? It's a win-win scenario where it's a win for them and it's a win for myself if that deal closes. So if I get more information earlier on, the better the use case for the account executive.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that as well. I feel like a lot of SDRs, it's a it's the shortest term mindset that you have because obviously on a monthly basis you're looking to schedule and complete X meetings, and then even on a shorter time basis every day counts. And I think that's really a different mindset that you're having, is just saying, hey, like, I'm really trying to make sure the account executive is set up, which most people don't think about that in the role because everyone has different incentives, but it is important to think about. So you're scheduling different meetings, right? You're going about it in unique ways. What is like one technique that you are doing right now that you would say is a little bit different that you'd like to share with the audience? It could be like, hey, I tried this new subject line, I'm doing this new cold call intro. What's something that's been like working really well for you?
Recently, what's been working for me is just through referrals,
Mhm.
where it's mostly by emails. Then I'll call them. The email would be, just the introduction would be like, I spoke to so and so, and then I just give 1 or 2 lines about what I spoke to that person about. Um, and then say if they're using a tool, one of our competitors, I'll highlight, I speak to loads of people in your position with similar roles, and they mention that there's a problem with this tool in this certain manner. And then a simple question in the email is, can you relate?
Hmm.
I've had quite a lot of responses from that, just a simple question saying, can you relate? And most of the time it is yes. Um, and then you just hop on a call with them for about 2 to 5 minutes, and then most of the time you get a meeting with them in the next week.
Nice. How
It's very simple. It's probably very common, but I find it very effective.
ask doing referrals for SCRs is not as common of a topic. Thing is because it's just like, oh, okay,
Okay.
like, yeah, the people are just like, all right, like, cool, whatever, I'll just move on. I think it's that piece. So I guess how often is that happening? Is this like a, hey, this is a weekly play I'm running? Is this like, hey, like it happens every so often? Like, what's the occurrence of this?
So if I put an example, because I've been away for the last 2 weeks, but I got
Yeah.
back this
Right.
week. Um, I booked 5 meetings so far, and 3 of them have been through a referral basis via
Mm,
email. And beforehand, I would say it was about 50% of the time.
okay. So it's just still solid. I mean, that's I think it's important for everyone to write that down, take that information. Referrals is something that you could still do as an SDR. Most people think it's just for the account executive or even the customer success person. I think, again, thinking about that way is the wrong way to go about it. So these are ways that you can continuously expedite expand your relationships when you may not think it's there. Now, as we go and we talked about a lot of different things today, you gave a unique perspective. Let's make this a little bit more broad. What advice would you give to other SDRs out there, maybe that are starting out and they're looking to get to that next level?
I think it's probably a common one. You probably have heard this a
Mm,
lot, but it's pretty daunting for people who are new to the SDR role to call.
mm,
And it's just simple. The more calls you do, the better you get. So just don't back away from it. We've all done like bad phone calls in the
of course.
past, but it just gets easier and easier. So that's the one bit of simple advice I would say.
How many, when you first started, how many calls were you doing a day? And has that lowered or is that like
No,
dead
I
wrong?
shied away. I've increased
Okay.
dramatically. Like before, I would call, but I would take my time. Like I would almost in my head there would almost be a bit of anxiety. Like
Sure.
you just see the title CEO of this 200-person
Yeah.
company, and you think, oh God, he's gonna like hang up. He's gonna
Right.
like, you know, shout on the phone or something. I don't know. And then you think about it for about 5 minutes, and then you eventually call, and most of the time, no answer.
Yeah.
So you waste a lot of your time. So if you just keep going through the calls almost without thinking, then you get a lot better at it.
Yeah.
And then the more calls you do, the more likely you are to book someone.
Yeah. That makes that makes complete sense. And that's what I always tell people is you should try to do like 50, 60, depending on who you're calling, 80 calls as soon as you start, because you want to get beat up. That's the best way to put it, right? Like
Yeah,
you just want to
yeah,
get the rejection out the way. You want to have those conversations because if you're able to convert opportunities on the phone, email, video becomes not as a difficult thing to do. And you're going to become more confident over time because of that. Right. And also, any embarrassing experiences, like, you source someone that's bankrupt, something like that, they don't seem as bad as getting the rejected part of on a cold call. It's very personal. It's hard to overcome. Like, it's hard. Right. And so you want to do that there.
yeah.
So I think that's important. And then if we kind of flip it towards the end here, any shout outs that you want to give to anyone before we wrap up?
Well, definitely my manager, Rachel, my director, David. You know, I had a bit of a slow start. You know, like I say, you know, lower the calls and stuff like that. They gave me the confidence
Mm,
for it. Probably a shout out also to a guy that I started with, George Clark.
cool.
He's very good. He gave me a lot of good tips. You know, he gave me some encouragement. So big shout out to him also.
Awesome. Well, shout out shout out to the people that got the shout outs there. Hopefully you all listen to this episode and you enjoy that. And thank you all so much for listening to another SCR Confessions. Hope you laughed a little bit, you learned, and we'll see you all next time.